Okay, let's see if that works. Well, hello friends. Hopefully we are live. And as soon as somebody reacts to that, I will know that we are. Trying out the ultra low latency setting today, so we'll see how that works. Cool. So the latency doesn't go any lower than this. So we'll see how that works. Hello everybody, very nice to have you here. And welcome back to yet another episode of SerenityOS Office Hours. As you know, we do these every Friday, and it's totally open for questions, preferably technical, about SerenityOS. And just going to take a moment for people to join in. It's nice to see everybody. Hello, Mateus. How am I today? I am fine today. How are you? Okay, it looks like we have about 5 seconds of latency according to people, so that sounds really good. I think last time we had 10 or 12 or something like that, so 5 seconds is definitely better. And yeah, because like the shorter the latency, obviously the easier it is to interact and have a conversation about something. Masood Karim asks, hey Andreas, can I use this operating system in my PC? So Serenity is not really ready for daily use because it's just so unstable and hardware support is very limited. So it's unlikely that you could use it on your PC right now, but eventually we will get it to a point where where it will be usable. And I have noticed recently a couple of more people working on hardware support, and that's always nice to see. Okay, so Stefan asks, I have a question about PixelPaint. Why the bottom layer is on the top of the list? All other image editors have layers in reverse order. All right, so the moment I have a build here, we can look at that. But the short answer is that it's just wrong, and we should fix it. I think the reason that the bottom layer is on top is because it was much more convenient to implement that, because the iteration order naturally flows that way. And if you want the background layer on the bottom, you have to do some additional arithmetic to just to get it to look right. But I totally agree that we should do what every other image editor does and just put the background at the bottom. It would be a lot better. Let's see. German WTB asks, how much of the actual drawing is done in the application process and how much in the Windows server, and why? Oh, that's a fantastic question. So basically, all application windows draw themselves. But first off, wait, no, that's not what I wanted. Wait, I just did a fresh build here, and I have a Swedish key map for some reason. Wow, everything is all wrong. How do I get out of this? Okay. That's not even the right order. All right. Please hold while I awkwardly make a disk image. All right. So let's look at the PixelPaint thing first, and then we'll go to the drawing stuff. So, so he was asking about this layer list here. So we have the background layer at the top, even though it sits underneath this layer right here. And that's just weird, and I don't think we should do that. So it's just something that we should fix. And if anybody wants to work on that, it's just, just go ahead. So German was asking about drawing in application processes versus Windows Server. So the easiest way to answer this is to say that Windows Server really manages these rectangles that it doesn't really know anything about. So from Windows Server's perspective, the PixelPaint window is just a rectangle that starts here and goes all the way down here, right? And whatever's inside of that rectangle, Windows Server doesn't care. And all of that is drawn by the application process. So it starts, the menus are drawn by Windows Server, but everything below the menu, including the status bar, is drawn by the application. And then Windows Server kind of just composites the window stack in the whatever order it's supposed to be in. And that's the separation. And as far as why we do it that way, I think it's just a lot easier to let applications manage their own drawing instead of having primitives on the server side that you then sort of remote control. And if you look at something like X11, there are a lot of benefits to having remote primitives. Like you can do protocol forwarding, for example, so you could run X11 applications remotely and have them display on your machine. But today, that's more of a gimmick than a useful feature, really. So I don't know. Anyway, let's see. So Anatoly asks, the window manager of Serenity looks pretty cool. Is it a separate software from the kernel, and can I install it on another Unix operating system? It is separate from the kernel, but it does run on other Unixes. Like it has been ported to OpenBSD. The main problem is that the window manager does not coexist with, for example, X11 window managers or even X11 Windows. It assumes that it gets control of the entire screen frame buffer. So our Windows Server can run on basically any Unix that has a frame buffer, but it cannot host like native X11 applications, stuff like that. Okay. Masood Karim is asking, what do I think about GitHub Copilot? I think it's an interesting project. I have doubts about it being useful for anything actually meaningful, but I would be happy to be proven wrong about that. So I'm just in the wait and see camp, I think. Let's see. Mustafa is asking, oh wait, let me start here. Firefox is asking if I follow the Starship progress from SpaceX. I have not been following anything related to that. So Mustafa is asking a general C++ question, saying he's familiar with how references versus pointers work, but he never really knows when to use references versus pointers. What is my opinion on that? So my opinion is that the best use of references is to use them as a raw pointer that you know is not null. And that goes both for its use in APIs, but also for local things. So I don't know what happened to my C-line, so let me see if I can start C-line. My computer's in a weird state today. Okay. Oh, that's not what I wanted to look at. That's me learning another language here. How do I get into... How do I get into my regular project? Here it is. All right. Yeah, so as Das Candy says here, use references if it cannot be null, use pointers if it can be. Really, the important thing to remember about references is that that they are just raw pointers with the added restriction that they cannot be null, and also that they cannot be rebound. Let's see. Can I finally get to some code here? Let's get something. All right. So if you have struct foo, I'm just here because it's space. It's no significance to this particular piece of code here. But if we have foo, some foo, The key difference between foo like this and a foo like this is that foo here, this foo putter, can never be reassigned, right? So that's something that is important to remember. A reference, once you bind a reference to a value, then it's stuck. So outside of that, just use it as a non-null raw pointer. That's, I guess, what I would say about it. Got a little disoriented there because of struggling to start C-line. Sorry about that. Let's see. Mechanist says, since you want Serenity to be a daily driver one day, what features / applications need to be implemented to make this possible, and how far away do you think this will be? So in my personal use case, to make this a daily driver, I need really I need webcam recording software and video encoding, and I need a browser that's good enough to upload stuff to YouTube, because those are things that I do regularly. But everybody has a different set of requirements for daily use, right? And I think it's hard to tell how far away it is, because if you say something like, well, I need to use YouTube to upload videos, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and it's really hard to estimate how far away we are from that actually being feasible. But I guess we just have to keep working on it, and eventually we'll get there. I try not to think too much about like how far away something is, because the answer is almost always just going to be sort of intimidating. I guess it's better not to think about it. Let's see. Helge says, mind walking us through the rect class and talk a bit about it? The rect class? So you're talking about graphics rect, I guess. So the rect class in libgraphics represents a rectangle of a templated type. So typically we use either integer rectangles or floating point rectangles. So we have intrect and floatrect as two handy type defs for those right here. And it really, the rect class is sort of based on the qrect from Qt and the intrect and floatrect from WebKit. So they are really just very simple two-dimensional rectangles with a location and a size. And it's the fundamental type in 2D GUI programming. So I've worked on multiple projects that involve 2D programming, 2D graphics programming, and they all had a rect class that worked basically like this. So I've just modeled it after what I already knew. Let's see. AB asks, can I run NeoFetch on Serenity to flex? Ooh, I don't know. Let's see if we can build a NeoFetch port and run it to flex. I don't think I've ever used this port. We have to build bash first, apparently. We'll come back to that once the build is ready. Dither8 asks, ever thought of getting rid of dot files like Plan 9? Apparently it was a bug in Unix back in the day. I don't know what Plan 9 has done to dot files, and I also don't know... oh, I don't know what's going on here with my... Oh my goodness. What are we trying to build? JQ. Okay, let's try to get back into flexing from the clean tree here. I don't know what Plan 9 has done to dot files, and I don't know what bug you're referring to. I don't necessarily have anything against dot files. I think they kind of make sense to me, and it's such an established pattern that I don't know what the issue is. let's see. Ecoptic asks, should you always use references when you can? And does not using references copy the value every time? So if you're passing something by value, so if you have a struct, and then you have a function, func, that takes a struct s, then whenever you call this function, it will copy the struct. So if the struct just looks like this, that doesn't really matter because this fits in a CPU register or whatever anyway. But if you start to have like big fat things in here, you know, like maybe a vector of strings with some stack capacity, then copying that thing is going to incur a higher runtime cost. So at that point, it might be wiser to pass it by reference. So that's what we do in Serenity. We tend to pass things by const reference if they are larger than what would fit in your CPU registers. And if it's a valid situation to pass a null pointer instead, so then we would use a pointer instead of a reference. WSKJ asks, hi Andreas, love the beard. I was wondering what you thought of Zig. I don't really have an opinion about Zig that is worth hearing because I have not written enough Zig, but I'm sure it's fine. Dev0 says, what do you think about JT's Lang Jam, and do you will participate? JT from Systems with JT. So JT, a friend of the channel, is running a programming language jam where you can create a programming language over a weekend. I think that's the basic idea. And it sounds like a fun project. I'm not personally really interested in building like toy languages. That's outside of my interest area, but it does seem like a fun thing for people who do enjoy these things. So I definitely encourage people to check it out. And it's going to be on Friday, the 20th of August. So 2 weeks. And I think JT had a video on his channel introducing it. So let's go and find that. Look, I'm the second result saying that it's one of my favorite YouTube channel. It is one of my favorite YouTube channels. So introduce Lang Jam, right, on Systems with JT. So I will link that in the chat if people want to check that out. Okay. Let's see. Poco Tom says, hi Andreas, I'm interested to know about your home workstation setup and spec. Okay, sure. So my home workstation is was built by from donated parts that people sent to me. So last year there was a thread on the SerenityOS subreddit where people thought that my computer was too slow, and they got together to donate a bunch of parts so I could build a faster computer. In this thread right here, computer hardware donation for Serenity development. And some very lovely people pooled together and sent me a machine. And that's the machine I'm using today. And this is what it looks like on the inside. I'm a fantastic computer photographer, as you can see. And the specs are that it's an i9 9900K with 64 gigs of RAM, SSD, and a whole bunch of things that you can find the exact specs in this Reddit thread. And like literally, I think everybody linked the kind of things that they were sending. So I'll just post that in the chat. Right. Ryder Hitchhike says, I think he's talking about the bug in old Unix where ls ignored anything where the first character of the name was a dot. So it could ignore dot and dot dot. And that also caused dot files to be hidden, and it became a convention. Right. I mean, that makes sense. Oh, now we have NeoFetch. So basically the first version of, or some early version of Unix didn't print like anything in ls that started with a dot, and that's how the dot files concept started. Makes sense. I think it's still like it's such an established thing at this point that changing it is just silly. Because I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with it, and now that the convention is established, like why not just keep it? So let's try neofetch. Boom. Does that constitute a flex? That looks really cute. Uptime 20 seconds. All right. VitsLab says, general Linux question. If I've used my KDE Neon for a year, is there an easy way to collect my dot files into a Git repo? Are there any good practices? I have no idea. I really have no idea. Let's see. AB says, how are you liking Rust so far? Well, I haven't written 100,000 lines of Rust yet, so I don't really have an opinion worth hearing. And as VitsLab says, check the FAQ. So the FAQ, by the way, I need to mention this, is on my github.io/FAQ. And it's also linked in the bottom left of the screen. And in the pinned message in the chat, and you should be able to find it somehow. And these questions tend to come up almost every stream, so it's an easy way to find those. Okay, so German asks, I have noticed that Serenity gets a lot more community interaction and contribution than a lot of long-established open system projects. What do you think you've done maybe done right that they didn't? Okay, I'm not sure exactly what that is. It's something that I've thought about a bunch. I think this YouTube channel definitely helps a lot with making the system accessible to people. Because if you go and look at some other operating system project, very often you see like a big source tree and you see these people working on it, but you don't really know what they're up to or who they are, what their goals are. And maybe they have a web page where they've written some of these things down, but if you compare that to what you get here, where you can just see me working on it, and now we can interact with each other, right? And it's, I think this live feeling of it, this living, breathing feeling of Serenity has been a huge help to getting people interested in it. And I would love to see other projects do similar things. I think there's so much space for other projects to do what I've done here. Obviously, it requires a huge time and energy investment, so not everybody is willing or able to put that into it, but it would be amazing to see somebody else try the same approach to something. But as for like why do we still get so much community interaction, and why are people excited about it even now, like almost 3 years into it? I think also because it's a pretty cool and fun project, right? Like, I mean, I should really ask all of you, like, why are you here, right? Like, what is it that attracts you to this project that you might think is unique about it, or what is uniquely appealing about it? Because I don't actually know. I would love to know. Let's see. Ecoptic says, you say that you don't still have an opinion on languages like Zig and Rust, but are you using them outside of the OS, or you stick to C++? I am learning more languages outside of C++ just to expose myself to other ideas. But I definitely feel the most comfortable with C++ at this point. But I think it is important to expand your horizons when it comes to programming languages. And it's something that I was a bit bad at for a long time, because I would just spend all my time writing C++ code and trying to stay productive. And I had some conversations in the last year that made me realize that I was missing out on sort of mind expanding programming concepts by skipping over putting in the time to into other languages. So now I try to make an effort to do that. William Leslie asks, was Pledge inspired by BSD's Capsicum or something else? Pledge is an API that we took from OpenBSD. So OpenBSD invented Pledge and Unveil, and we just lifted the idea from them. We just took it. And we have expanded a bit on it. So our pledge doesn't work exactly like theirs, and we have some additional pledges that they don't support, and they have some things that we don't support, but the basic idea comes from them, OpenBSD. Let's see. T-Bit says, is there any software that you would never try to write yourself and use a port instead? I don't think so. There's nothing I would refuse to write forever, but I already did do a Git port, for example, because I didn't want to get into writing a Git implementation. But in the future, we might want to do that. I'm not against writing any kind of software myself, as long as I'm interested in it. Vitz Lab says, Andreas, do you mind sharing your financial status? Are you able to support yourself/family with donations yet? Yeah, basically. And that is what I do now. I do this full time. And it is tight, but it does work at the moment. And it has been going on a really good trend. So I'm hoping to see that trend continue. But obviously it's something that I stay on top of, and if something starts to go in the wrong direction, I have to take countermeasures. But I have a fair bit of runway at this point, so I can take some fluctuations and whatnot. But at the moment it is stable, so that is really cool. And I recently set up a business for myself so that I can do my taxes properly and get insurance and things like that. So it is pretty cool. So Mr. BN100 says, the monthly video is a great way to discover the OS. Right. I think a lot of people only watch the monthly videos, and for that reason, I try to put a large amount of effort into those. And the monthly videos, every month they get more and more difficult to make because there's more and more happening in the project. And to try to condense, like in the last video, we had 2,100 commits, and to condense that into like a half-hour video takes me a whole day. And it's, I mean, obviously, if you've seen the video, it now got to the point where I have to ask for help because it's just too much. But I do put a lot of effort into the monthly videos because I think, as I said, like many people only watch the monthly videos to keep up to date with the project, and it's also the best. I think it's the best way to get a clue about what we're doing right now. Let's see. Jack Delahunt says, I'm not very experienced with operating systems, but when people use the word kernel, what do they actually mean? Like, what does the kernel do and not do? So the kernel basically manages the hardware and the CPU and things like that. And the job of the kernel is to make sure that every process and every thread gets a chance to use the hardware, and that things are fair so that no process sort of hogs all the resources. And obviously there's a lot more to it than that, but that's the basic idea of the kernel. So the kernel sits underneath everything, and it's the crossing guard that lets processes across the street one by one so they can go to the hardware school. And it also makes sure that everybody either gets the memory that they ask for, or they tell them, oh, unfortunately, we don't have enough for you. We can't give you as much as you want, so either you can crash or you can ask for less, and things like that. That's a, that's a very high-level description. Let's see. Alex Vitkov says, I only watch SerenityOS content because of CatDog. Well, let's get CatDog up on screen. He's a very good boy. Or girl. I'm not sure. It's a cat or a dog. I'm not sure either. Let's see. So Danushka says, how does the profiler collect OS level stats of process? Okay, so the way the profiler works in Serenity is that when you run profile on some command, so let's run it on File Manager. So we'll just start a File Manager. What happens is that we mark the File Manager process for profiling, and whenever the timer interrupts the kernel to say like, okay, time for you to give attention to a new process, when we give attention to the File Manager process, we also record what it was doing at that point. That's roughly how it works. So basically, whenever we schedule a process, we also check, what are you doing right now? And we also, I think, as of a while ago, we also interrupt on a regular schedule to just sample what the process is doing at this very moment. In fact, maybe I'm giving outdated information. Originally, at least, we would do it when we schedule the process. I think maybe nowadays we do it independently of scheduling. I guess we'll have to look that up. Perf. Where do we do this? Scheduler. Profile. Wait. We would have to add a perf event. So I'm not the last person who worked on profiling, so I have to figure this out. So profiles consist of this thing that we call perf events or performance events, right? So a sample is when we just look at the stack of a process to see what it's doing right now, and then we just record that and let the process carry on. That's the fundamental building block of a profile. And then what the profile application does, it takes just a long list of stack samples and builds them into a tree so that you can explore it the way that we do in the GUI. Wait, where do we do this? I got to figure out perf event sample. Here we are, add CPU sample event, which is called on timer tick. Performance manager. All right, so. Okay, yeah, so the way I read this is that we have a separate timer that's the profiling timer. And when profiling is active, then whenever the profile timer ticks, we call performance manager timer tick, which will capture the stack of the any program that has profiling enabled, and then just remember that. And this was just looking at the stack samples, and then as you could see here, we have a whole bunch of other perf events. So like we can record mallocs and freeze and mmaps and munmaps and process execs, exits, and all of this stuff. We can even record kernel heap allocations, and all of these things build sort of a recording of what that program was doing, and then you can just inspect that in the profiler application afterwards. Statistical profiler, William Leslie. Yes, that's right. Okay, so we have a super chat from Ruv ... Wait, is that the full name? Okay. That's so weird. Wait, let me resize that. Ruven Wolf. Yeah, thank you so much for the super chat. And I don't know what this is. This is a flying super pair. Very strange looking, but thank you very much for the super chat. And now I have to try to resize that thing back again. Let's see what we missed here. Okay, so Shantanu was saying, since you have been working on x86 for i686 will still continue, right? I have an old 32-bit only laptop waiting for Serenity one day. Right, so I think we'll still support x86, at least for the time being. I don't see any particular reason not to. Like 32-bit and 64-bit Intel architecture they're not that different from each other. Like there's a huge amount of overlap at the medium and high level stuff. There's some difference in the low level parts, but it doesn't seem like a maintenance burden to me. At least not at this moment. But if it becomes a maintenance burden, we can always change that. See, Helga says, is there any project or YouTube channel you follow and enjoy? Sure. Like, I really enjoy the Zig project. I think they're doing really awesome stuff with their community building and stuff. The Zig Showtime channel that Loris runs, for example. Definitely recommend that. And not just because I've been on the show, but because I always watch. I always watch when they're on. I think I really like their approach to community building, and they're like experimenting and then trying stuff out. And I don't know. Even though we don't have any technical overlap with the Zig project, I feel that there's a lot of spiritual overlap. So I do follow and enjoy them. Paul Fragaman says he found Serenity through a video by Live Overflow about the P-trace race condition you had in Serenity, and now you're here. Well, I'm glad you're here, Paul. Yeah, a lot of people found the project through Live Overflow. It's very nice of him to feature us on his channel. And let's see if we end up in any security competitions again this Christmas. There's a weird tradition so far that every Christmas people hack the system, and then I get to go on a security hacking spree for a while. All right, let's see. Let me try to catch up here. Retro Game Plus says, congratulate you on your progress and hope you keep up all the good work. Also, please let us know how your mom's cat is doing. My mom's cat is doing beautifully. All right, Cat Monstret with the super chat saying, how's it going? It is going great, Cat Monstret. Thank you for the super chat. And also Philip H with another super chat. Thank you to you as well. No super pair for you, but that's fine as well. Thank you everybody for the super chats. I really appreciate it. Let's see. Meep asks that this question might be a little silly, but can you profile the profiler? That's not a silly question. It's a perfectly valid question. And if you think about it, whenever you're running the profiler, you can't avoid profiling the profiler at the same time because it's like this observer effect, right? Like because the profiler is there and running, it affects the profile. You can't necessarily profile only the profiling mechanism, but the profiling mechanism will show up in your profile. So if the profiling mechanism itself has bottlenecks, it will usually reveal itself somehow in the profile. And of course, the profiling visualization GUI, you can just profile because it's just an application that reads the text file. So that's definitely profilable, but the kernel parts of it, you can get some amount of introspection into it. One of the big issues we have in Serenity when it comes to profiling the kernel, though, is that a large part of our kernel currently runs under spin locks. So very often you don't see like exactly what the kernel is doing in a profile, but you just see that, oh, it entered into some critical section, taking a spin lock, or it exited from such a section. So one such thing that I know a lot of people have been curious about is why is fork so slow? And it's very hard to learn about that because a large part of fork happens in a critical section, so you can't actually profile it because it disables interrupts during that time. Let's see. Alfie says, what are your thoughts on x86 versus ARM architectures from OS development perspective? Is x86 really as outdated and bloated as they say? I don't think it's as big of a deal as people make of it. I mean, at the end of the day, most of the code that you write is going to be higher level than assembly, and outside of like the very low level stuff like boot code, interacting with hardware, and synchronization primitives and stuff like that, page table management, whatever. Outside of that, you're usually working in C or C++ or whatever language. So from an OS development perspective, I don't think it makes that big of a difference, because even within a kernel, I think most people who work on Linux, the Linux kernel, for example, they probably don't, most people probably don't work on CPU specific stuff regularly or even ever. But rather they would work on, for example, hardware drivers for something where they speak to a USB driver or something like that through a CPU agnostic interface. Let's see, Reuven asks, why did the system-wide menu bar have to go in favor of individual menus per applications? So the global menu bar, people ask about this sometimes. I removed it because I realized that it was just an artifact of a very old UI solution. I think the global menu bar made a lot of sense in the old Mac OS world where you had like 640 by 480 and you had limited screen space. So not having a menu bar per window like gave you a little bit of extra vertical space to work with, and it was really valuable since you only had 480 pixels to begin with. But nowadays, people have such big screens, right? I'm running in a reduced resolution here. If I crank this up to a much larger resolution, like my native resolution, then you can see that if I'm down here doing something, and then, well, actually, let's use terminal as an example. If I'm down here doing some stuff, and I want to click on something in the menu, it makes a lot of sense that it's right here to me. If I have to move my mouse all the way up here to hit the menu, I feel like that's very far to travel. And the distance between the application window here and the global menu bar would be greater than the size of the application window itself. So you have to travel like more than the window's size away from it to get to a part of it. And I don't know, it just, I grew up in the 90s, like sort of wishing I could have a global menu bar, because I would see Mac OS systems and I would sort of, I don't know, be jealous of their global menu bar. And that was one of the reasons that I wanted to have it in Serenity in the beginning, just so I could finally have that global menu bar that I couldn't have growing up on Windows. But after using the system with it for like, I don't know how long we had, almost 2 years, right? I just realized that this is stupid at high resolutions, and we should just let it go. Let's see. Oh, Philip with the super chat. I love your content. I'm working on GCC Rust and have some YouTube content to be released. How do you get over the nerves doing YouTube? Well, thank you for the super chat, Philip. That's awesome that you have some YouTube content about that. I think people are going to be super interested. To get over the nerves of YouTube, my main trick is to just upload stuff and then accept that it's a bit bad. If you go and look at my early videos, they are quite uncomfortable, really fumbly bumbly, and I'm frequently screwing up and going on like wild goose chases, and I have like a typo that's perplexing me for 20 straight minutes and stuff like that. And what I did was I just uploaded it anyway, and forced myself to accept that, like, okay, this is where I am right now, but if I work on this, I'll get better. And I think it didn't really get me over the nerves, but it got me motivated enough into thinking that there's a path to improvement here, and that path involves continuous work and continuous uploads. And I think that sounds super interesting. So let me know when you post that so I can share it with people. Let's see. Mustafa asking, what's an obscure detail about Serenity that you think nobody else knows? There are so many of those. And if I share them, then they will immediately be known. But I guess I can show you something. I mean, just between you and me and the other 160 something people watching right now. Let's see. So I know a bunch of people have found this, but let me show it to you too. So in the file system in the kernel, the default timestamp is called a mepoc, which is a play on words with the Unix epoch, which is January 1st, 1970. And the mepoc is when I was born, down to the actual minute on my birth certificate. And I think this is what you will see in /proc, for example. Or no? Wait, where are the mepoc files these days? In devfs. Okay, so in dev. Yeah, in /dev you will see these timestamps. That's the mepoc. And I just added that very early, and it was just something that made me chuckle a long time ago. And now it's still there. So that's something. Let's see. Mati asks, do you plan to implement Node API for your JS engine? I don't think so. Let's see. Dither8 asking, Andrew Kelly went on Core Recursive podcast to talk about Zig. Very interesting talk. Thought I would mention it to anyone interested. Yes, I agree. That was super interesting. Core Recursive podcast. I was just listening to that yesterday. I really enjoyed listening to Andy talk about the origins of Zig and how he sort of got to the point where he dared make the leap to working full-time on open source. And Andrew was a huge inspiration for me deciding to try to go full-time open source as well. I had read his Andrew Kelly, what was it called? I quit my cushy job. You had a blog post. I quit my cushy job at OkCupid to live on donations to Zig. Yes, I read this when it came out, and it made a huge impression on me. And it's one of the original seeds that I had in my head that maybe one day I could do something open source full time. I think this was back in 2018 or something. I don't remember exactly when this came out. Wait, how do I know when that came out? Oh, 2019. Okay. Yes. Very, very cool. And actually, the first draft, when I was writing a blog post about quitting my job, the first draft of this article was called "I Quit My Cushy Job to Live on Donations to SerenityOS," but then I just changed it to this because I didn't want to copy his style too much. Okay. Let's see. Soviet Bell Dandy asking, following up on the menu bar question, why does Windows Server draw menus and not each application? Wouldn't it make more sense for applications to handle that as well, since it's per application? And then German follows with, is the window manager managed menu bar just a holdout from the global menu bar at this point? Basically, yes. You could say that it's kind of a leftover from menus being a Windows Server concept, and we could probably move them to the application side, and that would probably be a good idea, actually. Less logic in Windows Server would generally be a good thing, I think. Ideally, Windows Server would be kind of a dumb compositor, maybe that knows some like decoration drawing stuff. The fact that it has to manage menus right now it's a vestige of the earlier architecture, just not something that anybody has taken the time to separate out. Synac recently did some work on simplifying the menu bar architecture in the Windows Server, and that was pretty good stuff. So we used to support like multiple menu bars and like swapping menu bars in a window, like swapping between multiple different menu bars, and there was just no reason to support that functionality. So Synac did a whole bunch of work on simplifying that, and it was really good. And continuing that work, moving menus or menu bars to the client side, I think that would be a really good idea. Yeah. We still need to manage menus, like the actual menu windows that pop up. They still need to be done on the server side, obviously. But not these menu bars. Oh my goodness, Benjamin Phelps with the super huge super chat and the winky smiley face. Well, thank you, Benjamin, for the super chat. That's awesome. Thank you. Benjamin's always here dropping the super chats. Long-term supporter. Very, very cool. Now, I almost wish that you would ask some big, complicated questions so I could spend a lot of time and effort on it. But I guess we could talk a little bit about the winky face, since that's the context you give me. So, did you know that Serenity supports emojis? And the winky face is one of them, I believe. Or did we have the winky face? Oh shoot, I'm not even sure. Also, these emojis are so small. Really makes me wonder if we should have some bigger emojis. These are just tiny pixel bitmaps. Let's get that magnifier here. That's the face. That's the face palm. Seems like maybe we don't have a winky one. Well, that goes in the to-do list for sure. But yeah, so this emoji picker here, you can bring that up with Control-Alt-Space, and it should work in any input context. So if you're in text editor and you're like, foo, Control-Alt-Space, get yourself an emoji picker, put some cherries, and booyah. Very awesome. Let's see. Noah says, you mentioned that you had interns at your job. Do you have tips for learning as a junior developer? Do you let them watch you, or do you give them tasks where you review their solution? Any tips? Usually, when I was managing interns, I would give them tasks and then kind of sit with them while they do the things and try as patiently as possible to just let them go through the process of figuring things out, and just being there as sort of an oracle for them that they could ask if they got stuck. But just I find that very often if you sit with a junior developer, just the fact that you're there gives them like this additional confidence to plow ahead on stuff. And very often the interns I worked with were able to just figure things out on their own, easier when I was sitting with them. But I didn't generally like ask them to watch me. I prefer to sit with them and do passive commentary on what they're doing. Of course, that's very different from what I do here on YouTube, but I think this works as well. And I don't know, I guess there's room for both types of things. Obviously, this works better at scale, right? Because I can't observe 100 interns at the same time. Let's see, Mustafa's asking, does YouTube charge more fees for donations than PayPal? I believe so. I have to admit, I have not looked into the exact fee structure of YouTube Super Chats. But I think PayPal is probably lower. And the absolute, like if you want to avoid fees, I think probably GitHub sponsors, at some point they introduced this one-time donation thing. And I think if you want to give a donation to somebody who's on GitHub sponsors, that's usually the lowest fee option because GitHub sponsors charges 0% in fees. Although I'm not sure if that's true worldwide. So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say too much about that. We would have to look into it. Let's see. Bogdan says, writing 10,000 lines of code versus solving bugs, which is the best to advance as a software engineer? Interesting. I think you need a healthy mix of both. But it is important to churn out a lot of code just to become comfortable. So if you haven't written 10,000 lines of code, you should definitely prioritize doing that because it will, once you, I don't know if there's an exact number, but once you need to build up confidence in your abilities and you need to build up your abilities before you can really solve bugs. And 10,000 lines to me sounds like a bare minimum to be able to solve real bugs in real software. But I do think that you need both. You can once you are competent at a language, you can stay alive or afloat by only solving bugs. But as I was talking about earlier, I've realized that I was holding myself back a little bit by not exploring other languages. So I try to do that now as well. So I think it's important to have a healthy diet of both writing new code and fixing issues in old code. Let's see. Danushka says, can you explain the memory structure of SerenityOS process, such as private data, shared data, image, heap, stack, etc., whether memory for a process is reserved or committed, etc.? Okay. So the memory structure of a SerenityOS process, the best way to quickly get an overview of it is to open System Monitor. So let's look at our text editor program that we opened here. And that would be this guy right here. So we just double click it and go under memory map. And this gives us a breakdown of the virtual memory address space, and every memory region here in the text editor program is represented by a row in this table. And you mentioned, let's see, private data, shared data, image, heap, stack, blah, blah, blah. So It's basically a typical Unix setup where the image, the executable image, is mapped into the process, and we use address space layout randomization. So I don't know exactly where it is here, but it is somewhere. Maybe we should mark the executable image in this list or something like that. I don't know. But basically, we map the executable image and all of the dynamic libraries that it links against somewhere in the address space, and all of the heap uses mmap. So you can see a malloc block here, malloc block here. They're also randomized, and the stack is suspiciously at the top here, at the bottom of the address space, which makes me think we could probably randomize the stack location better. But basically all memory is it's an mmap based system, you could say. It's not using SBRK, which is like the old really old style of heap management. And whether something is private or shared, that you can see here, the access field. So the access bits tell you if something is shared or not. You see an S, that means that it's shared. So this guy right here is shared, for example. And it's a true type font file that is open. So it's mapped shared, does not consume private memory for this process. But I don't know, if you have like a more specific question, I guess we could get into details. But really it works essentially the same as Linux or Mac OS or something like that. And whether memory for a process is reserved or committed, we do have a committed memory functionality, and in the majority of cases we do commit memory. The one instance where we do overcommit is when you fork. So when you fork, we overcommit to implement copy on write, because in the vast majority of cases, forked children don't cow. So it's very profitable to not double commit on fork. But of course, you do run the risk of running out of pages and having to kill somebody, so it is unfortunate, but it is what it is. Let's see. Shantanu asks, any plans to port file systems read-only, like NTFS, ESD2, etc.? I don't really have any specific plans for anything. If somebody wants to do that, they are welcome. Let's see. Ruben asks, coming back to the menu, are shortcuts globally managed, or would a developer have to implement things like Control S for save individually? So the way we manage common shortcuts is we have this thing called common actions. And when you want, for example, a save action, you just do auto save action is common actions make save action. And then you give it a little lambda that will execute when the action is activated. And the action that you get from make save action will have Control S as the shortcut, so you don't need to think about that. Let's see, Mustafa says, there's less fear of messing up something big if you know someone who's an expert is watching over you. Yeah, exactly. You're much less hesitant to try to plow through problems. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And it's a very, very good environment to learn. RH Torres says, what distro are you using with your Mate desktop? It's just plain Ubuntu Mate. Let's see, Ecoptics asking, maybe it's a weird question, but does it ever happen that when you can't understand a programming concept or something, you leave it and do something else, and after some time, you suddenly understand it? Sure, yeah, that happens sometimes. Often it's very basic stuff too. And it's something that I used to find frustrating, but now I've accepted is just part of the process. Like I struggled a lot with red-black trees a while ago. just trying to understand how they worked. And I decided to just ignore it and then come back to it later. And then when I came back to it, it made sense. Let's see. Nico says, "Hi Andreas, I usually watch your videos at 2x speed. Since that's not possible in a live stream, could you please try talking at twice your normal speed? Thanks much, your biggest fan." No. And just because you asked, I'm now going to speak slower, you joker. Let's see. Benjamin Phelps says, "Do you think there is any performance loss from the console logging?" Yeah, absolutely. There is absolutely performance loss. If you have a program that does a ton of console logging, you've totally noticed it in profiles. And it's very common that you profile something and you think you have an idea of why it's slow. And then when you look at the profile, it turns out, oh, it's all in debug line. It's all in this bastard right here. And that's pretty funny. And there's been some work on, there's a Vert.io console device, I think, but I don't know how finished that is, but supposedly there's an interface in QEMU and other Vert.io compatible hypervisors that should allow us to shuffle like more bytes across in one go, instead of what we currently do, which is to like spit out one single byte to a debug port via IO instructions, which is a huge bottleneck. I don't know what the state of that stuff is, but hopefully it would be something that could help us. See, David Greg says, "If I remember correctly, YouTube takes about 30% of super chats." Okay, right, so it's the Apple tax. Cool. Let's see. Zero Haskor says, "Is there any chance of an implementation of JVM in Serenity in the future?" Well, you can increase the chances infinitely by doing it yourself. I cordially invite you to try. German says, "Even though you probably don't have 10,000 lines in it, do you still think shell script is something we should actually use as heavily as we do for multi-hundreds of lines of code?" Yeah, I mean, I've seen good shell scripts and bad shell scripts, and it seems to me that the longer a shell script gets, the more likely it has problems. It's one of those languages or paradigms or whatever where if you can't keep it short, then maybe it's best not to do it. But I've certainly written very long shell scripts myself, and if I think about all the long shell scripts I've written, many of them would probably have been better as Python programs or something like that. So I think there's a place for shell scripts, but you need to know when to stop, and it is hard to know when to stop. Alexander 256 says, "KDE and GNOME each has a collection of games that builds on the same foundation. When will the SerenityOS game development SDK come out?" Well, we do actually have the SerenityOS game development foundation SDK, DirectS, if you will. It's called libcards. This is the sort of the patience card games library. So it's used by Spider, Solitaire, and Hearts, I think. So it's the DirectX of SerenityOS. We have Spider, Solitaire, and Hearts. all using the foundational game technology here. We could probably improve upon this if we needed to support other games. I do think that the games that we have today, the card games and Minesweeper are probably like the nicer games. Chess is like the UI of chess is okay. The AI is really dumb. I do feel like there's this pretty serious quality issue with all of the games that have any kind of animation, that they simply don't look good and they don't feel good and they're not fun to play. So if somebody can figure out how to improve that, and then put it into a game development SDK, that would be a cool project. Ride or Hitchhike says, is there a reason you remove yourself from the user list on the Serenity Discord when you do a stream/video, or is that unintentional? It's just because I go offline, because Discord uses X amount of resources on my machine, and I would rather have those resources allocated to the video recording, just in case. Let's see. Patchy the Pirate and Potty the Parrot says, hi, Andreas. Hi, Patchy the Pirate and Potty the Parrot. That's really difficult to say. Oh, wow, I'm quite far behind here. Let's see. Vitslab says, you guys can scroll back 20 minutes and then play at 2x speed. Yes, you can. Keck Leon says, do you going to create your own operating system? I am actually already doing that, if you can believe it. I started quite a while ago now, and the name is SerenityOS, and this is what it looks like. It's the operating system project I started in 2018, and also why 99% of people are here. That's what this YouTube channel is all about. Let's see. Yay Fam says, when RTX ray tracing on SerenityOS? When you implement it, of course. When else? I don't think it's gonna happen unless you do it. Nico says, sorry if someone asked this recently, but what's the current thinking on the JS bytecode VM? Wait until correctness is at above 80% or some other number before spending much time on it. That's essentially my thinking. Not necessarily a specific number, but I think the last time I worked on it, the thing I was the most concerned about is variables and variable bindings and scoping mechanics, because we're just so far from the spec when it comes to how variables work and how bindings work. And if we implement bindings in the bytecode today so that they mirror what we currently do in libjs, then we have to redo the bytecode once we figure out how they should work. So I guess at least that's my perspective, that I would want to fix up all of the bindings, data structures and stuff like that so that they work according to spec. There's probably other stuff as well, but that was my main thing. That said, I haven't actually looked at libjs for several weeks now, because there's been so many people working actively on it that I feel like I'm not really needed there. And I can spend my time on something else. And I love when that happens, by the way. Like, it makes me so happy when something is so actively developed that I can just step away and do something else. Of course, like, sometimes I see something really, really interesting that I still want to work on, but the fact that libjs just lives its own life and grows and improves with all of the awesome people working on it, and they don't need me. That makes me incredibly happy. So I don't know if there's a number of correctness percentage that I'm waiting for before spending time. I think for me, it's really just once variable bindings work correctly, then I think I would pick it back up. And maybe I should try to make them work correctly. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. Shantanu says SerenityOS should incorporate JSON library in its shell. That would be a sweet spot. Miss JQ or JSON natively in Bash. I mean, I agree that we could definitely have better JSON primitives in the shell programming environment. My intuition is that we would benefit from making JavaScript a more accessible language for interacting with the file system and stuff like that, because JavaScript obviously already has great JSON access, right? So I don't know exactly how that would work, but it seems to me that given how much effort we're investing into JavaScript support, it would be nice to take advantage of that for general system scripting. Let's see. Noah says, you convinced me that C++ is not a bad language. I'm coming from C. What features would you introduce first into a C code base? If I had a C code base and I decided to use C++ to improve it somehow, I think I would probably introduce RAII or just destructors, constructors and destructors, to get rid of almost every C code base tends to have these awkward function exits where, depending on how things went in the function, you have to sort of deallocate or free resources in as like maybe partially or all of the things, and you often see like go-tos and stuff like that depending on when you leave a function. And C++ constructors and destructors just allow you to do all of that stuff so effortlessly and without possibility of failure, which is really nice. So I think, yeah, that's what I would do first. Constructors and destructors. Let's see. Wait, am I skipping over so much here? Yuval Tasher asks, are you wearing a Serenity shirt? Let me show you. I'm wearing a Yak Overflow shirt. Yeah. And I'm also using a Yak Overflow mug. Very, very fancy. Ndirish says, the unique thing about SerenityOS is Andreas. He's a rare person left in the OS community filled with people who are not as positive, loving, and caring as Mr. Kling. Well, I don't know about that. I think there are many people who are positive, loving, and caring in any programming community, but I think a lot of people are shy or not necessarily willing to put themselves out there as much as I do, and because of that, you don't get to see so many people who are actually awesome. It's just that they might not want to do what I do, right? So I've certainly met a lot of really awesome people through this work and through my work in open source in general. And I always love it when I see other people like do this thing that I do, where you sort of put yourself out there, right, and participate, whether it's by making videos or being active on social media and things like that, and putting out good energy, good vibes. I love seeing that. But we have to recognize that not everybody wants to do that. For whatever reason, and that's fine. Let's see. Nate says, hi Andreas, these make me happy. Thanks so much for doing them. What's your favorite part of Serenity? Like, what's part of the code base fills you with the most joy? slash excitement when you work on it? That is, oh, that's a good question. Well, if we look at like stuff that I've been doing recently, to be honest with you, I was just filled with joy when I was making this stupid, simple little settings application. Because I feel like this application captures in a microcosm of what I want Serenity to be. Like I feel like it looks so nice and just has just the right visual style. The icons are in a good shape, and it has like all the nice UI behaviors, and it also surfaces settings which were previously sort of tucked away, each in their separate apps, and now it collects them all in one place. And this made me really, really happy to work on, and it's something that this is just a start. It's just the beginning of expanding on improved settings capabilities in the system. So that's definitely something that filled me with joy recently. But really, I am pretty happy working on every part of the system, to be honest. If there would be something in the system that made me really unhappy to work on it, I think I would try to get it removed from the system, because everything in SerenityOS is there because we want it to be, because it aspires to be beautiful and to be something useful and good, right? And that's not to say that I want to work on everything all the time. Like I definitely have like temporary interests, and I go back and forth on things, but I'm pretty happy with working on any part of the system, as long as it's the one I'm interested in right now. Let's see. Daniel Zalega says, oh wait, that's for somebody else. But he was talking about OpenGL, software OpenGL and Serenity, which we do have a GL implementation. I don't think anybody's been working on it recently, but it does support some basic stuff, and I think the ambition of Jesse's was to get it to run Quake 1 in software GL mode. That would be cool. Ludwig Beckert says, where did you get the icons from for the settings menu? The menu? Like this icon right here? Or you mean these icons? Many icons in the system are sort of remixes or like redrawings or remasters of various icons from 90s software, from like Adobe and Microsoft and other places. And I didn't make all of these. I made the display one, which is this was inspired by I think I made it based on this thing right here. And this thing was inspired by Windows 2000, and I don't remember who made this one. This one was also inspired by Windows 2000, and I added a mouse wheel to it and some other stuff. I don't know. It's just usually the icons are drawn based on some general like 1990s look, and heavily inspired by old systems. Let's see. Reuven Wolf asks, how does your QEMU run so fast? I get about 15 to 20 FIPS an 800 by 600 Mac OS user. Okay, so Mac OS will definitely screw you up, but I do think there's some way to get faster virtualization, but I don't actually know how. If you come to the Discord server, I'm sure that somebody there runs Mac OS and they can help you get it faster. RMO says, Andreas, what would be the most stable part of SerenityOS? I don't know. It seems to me that the most stable part right now is probably the GUI library. That thing just works pretty well and does its job. And the JavaScript engine is also really stable. Even though it's not always correct, it is very stable. But just the general like graphical parts of the system are pretty stable. And the kernel has been improving a lot lately. Although there are some weak points in the kernel where, like, if you take away most of the memory, then the kernel can get a little bit cranky and hard to negotiate with. But that's something we're working on improving. But yeah, I guess I would say that the desktop and GUI system is probably the most stable. Let's see. Paul Gathago says, could you explain how you go about implementing a specification like POSIX or JS with a very basic example? Okay, so I do have a video actually where I start writing an HTML parser based on the HTML specification. And it's called Let's Build a Spec Compliant HTML Parser. This was just the start of it. It took me a long time to get it going, and it's still work that's still ongoing. But in this video, you can see exactly how I just start reading the spec and then just start sketching out the parser step by step, implementing the steps of the spec algorithms. So definitely recommend that video if you want to see that. I will link it in the chat for you. Let's see. Panta82 says, will you add search to settings or expose the individual settings somehow to system-wide spotlight? I don't know. I don't really have a plan for anything, but maybe. Let's see. Yayfam says, how do you accept PR and know they are sent in with good faith? And how can you know whether someone sent in code that may be differently licensed, e.g. GPL or something like that? Yeah, so we have had one situation that I remember where somebody tried to submit GPL code, and somebody tried to submit somebody else's GPL code. They had just taken code from glibc and they were pretending that they had written it themselves, and it even had like the original comments intact and everything. And that was extremely annoying to me because this person pretended that was not true. And when I asked them not to do that, they said that I'm totally not taking this from glibc, which I thought was really, really stupid. So I do try to keep an eye out for this kind of thing. Fortunately, most parts of the system are, it's pretty easy to tell if code is original. The areas where it gets iffy is in stuff like the C library, right? Because it's really easy to lift code from glibc or something like that, and I really hope that people don't do that. Like, if you're going to take code from any other place or use it as heavy inspiration, then please be inspired by license compatible things. Shantanu Gajil says, I am sometimes afraid that the direct lifts are copyright suits waiting to happen. I don't know that anything in the system is a direct lift from anywhere. And people have been copying GUI styles back and forth for the last 30 years. And I'm not aware of any copyright suits, at least not in this particular field. Certainly there have been like Apple v. Samsung, but I don't think that's really relevant here. Let's see. Nicholas Hollett says, do you have a reasoning around which apps do MDI versus apps that don't? Not really. I guess when it comes to something like PixelPaint, I'm not married to the idea of the tabbed interface. I actually think the tabbed interface is not really good. If we look at this, right? The tabbed interface here means that while I can work with 2 bitmaps in the same instance of the program, I can't really like copy from one and look at the other one at the same time. Like I have to switch between them and I can only see one at a time. I think it might make more sense if they were separate windows. Oh, MDI means multiple document interface. So it's when a program supports multiple documents at the same time, whereas like in text editor, we only have one thing. I think maybe it would be nicer if these would be separate windows. Or if you would have the option of making them windows. Not sure. Let's see. I guess another option would be to add tabs to text editor. I don't know. I haven't thought that much about text editor MDI. Something to think about. Oh, Dimitri with the super chat. Thank you for all your work on Ladybug. Thank you, Dimitri. That's funny because I was just reading this comment here. Are we going to see another set of mass coding videos anytime soon? Mass coding. So if you want to see mass coding videos, you got to check out Dimitri's channel. Dimitri is building a compiler for a language called Mass. And he is just churning out these compiler programming videos, and they're really deep and technical. And if you are interested in compilers, you should definitely check these out. Yes, of course I'm sharing the link. It's right there. I don't know what Dimitri does for a living, but he certainly knows a lot about compilers. Let's see. Adler Oliveira asks, if I want to write software, let's say in Rust, is it possible to target SerenityOS? At the moment, I don't think so, but eventually it probably will be. But right now, there isn't a straightforward way to target Serenity, but you could certainly be the person that makes it possible. If you are interested, you can add that support. I don't know how to do it, but it could be figured out. Zenithium asks, what do you think about Plan 9? Has it been an inspiration for some design choices in Serenity? I don't really have a strong opinion about Plan 9. I have never used it, and I don't find it particularly interesting. So it has not been an inspiration for any design choices. Oh, it seems like people are interested in tabs for text editor. Yeah, maybe we should consider that. Let's see. Yeah, people are interested in compilers indeed. Yeah, in Serenity, that's one of the things that we don't have at the moment. We don't have any compilers. Um, we do have some interpreters and stuff, but no compilers. And um, might be an interesting area to move into at some point once we have a need for it. But at the moment, we haven't had a need for it. Ralph asking, do you have an icon editor? We don't have like an icon editor specifically. We do have the PixelPaint program, which you could certainly go in here and make a 32 by 32 icon sized thing. And this is one of my ambitions with PixelPaint, is to make it viable for icon editing for myself. And there are a couple of things before it would be good enough, but we've been making pretty decent progress on it. Alex says, do you ever see SerenityOS as a viable everyday OS? So I don't know about anybody else, but for me, that is the goal, to make it viable for myself. What other people do with it, that's up to them. But I definitely see it as becoming a viable everyday OS for myself. At the moment, it is definitely not, but I intend to get it to that point for myself eventually. Crystal Rope says, how does the output of, for example, ls get added as a line to the terminal? So that would be, you're asking about the terminal application in libvt. So libvt has a terminal class, and it will receive input one character at a time. So first input comes in here, an on input, and it's passed to the parser. And the parser is a generated state machine that this is the generated code, and it's basically does the escape sequence parsing, UTF-8 parsing, stuff like that, and lines eventually get added. Let's see. It's been so long since I looked at this. We have this thing called put character at, right? So emit code point is the function that actually spits out a single code point or character to where the cursor is right now. So that's probably the thing you want to look at, and it will do line breaking and stuff like that. Here, put character at is the helper function that just physically puts the character into the character cell in the buffer, and then it handles line breaking here. So yeah, terminal emit code point is where you want to look. Let's see. Mustafa says, any chance of getting more than one pre-recorded video a week? I really miss the more in-depth ones. Well, there's certainly a chance. in the last week, I've been out basically the last week because I had my 2 nephews were in town, so I've just been playing Uncle for the last week, and I just came back to hacking on stuff yesterday, and it's good to be back, but I also enjoyed family time. I do have a bunch of videos that I want to make, so I do want to make them, but at the same time, these live streams, I do have to admit, have been sort of, it's been difficult to adjust to this. Usually after I stream, I go and I fall asleep, and it's getting easier and I'm getting better at it. But so far, I've kind of felt like after I do this, it's really difficult to make more content. But I think this is getting easier. Like I definitely don't feel uncomfortable now, and and I think it's getting easier. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't see why we can't get more content made. But I will say that I do think the most important thing for making videos is that I'm doing something I care about and that is fun, because if I'm not having fun making the video, then you're probably not going to enjoy watching it. So please bear with me as I figure out how to do all this in a fun and engaging way so that I can make content that is interesting and fun. Let's see. Vitz Lab with the super chat. Thank you very much. You inspire us, Andreas. Thank you. Dude, that's awesome. Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. Let's see. Yay Fam says, I'm working on a C compiler from scratch in C targeting x86. Can I include or donate it to Serenity? A C compiler has no particular value to the Serenity project, as we are not a C project. It's a C++ project. If you were developing a C++ project compiler, it would be more interesting, but probably not not really interesting even then, unless it's written using SerenityOS libraries and stuff. Let's see. Daniel asks, are you planning on making Hack Studio IDE be usable in more languages? So currently it supports C++ and JavaScript, and I don't really have any personal plans to do anything in particular, but oh wait, and it also supports the Serenity shell scripting language. And there's an architecture for language servers which are pluggable, so you can add additional language comprehension by implementing a language server, which is a separate process that runs and parses whatever code you're editing and creates all of the code comprehension features like autocomplete and stuff like that. So in theory, we could add any language, but it's not something that I'm planning to do, but somebody else might. Let's see. Mr. Roman Numerals here says, what's the new line character in SerenityOS? It's \n is the new line character. Typical Unix. GH Fear asks, do you work on this full-time now, Andreas? Yes. Yes, I am. And I have a post. If you check out my frequently asked questions, it's actually the first one. So as of May 2021, I'm working on SerenityOS full-time. Completely thanks to the generous support of all of the fans of the system. So that's really awesome. And to be able to do this. And let's see. X70 asks, are there any plans to use Rust for Serenity? There are no plans to use anything other than C++ for Serenity at the moment. Let's see. Alexander256 says, many languages come with their own package manager like pip and gem. Could a new package manager that focuses on programming language ecosystems instead maintainer packages be the future? I have no idea. I really don't know. I don't use package managers myself much, and I've been exposed to them when using some other languages, and to me it always seems like it always seems so weird to compose your program of like all of these random libraries that come from the outside. But I guess that's sort of environmental damage from working on Serenity so much, where we do everything ourselves, and then like going into any environment where you do the opposite just seems so strange to me. But I think package managers are definitely useful, but I vastly prefer having control over everything. Aniket asks, what font is that you're using? If you're asking about this font right here, this is JetBrains Mono, which you can get from the JetBrains website for free. It's jetbrains.com/mono, I guess. Is this font. It's a very, very nice coding typeface, in my opinion. Vitslab asks, does Serenity support SVG graphics? So we have limited SVG support. If we bring up the browser, let's see. Oh, this page has been redone. Now I don't know where the SVG is. Elements, SVG. Yeah, so these are SVG, and it's only in libweb at the moment, so you can't like use an SVG icon or something like that. We don't have a standalone SVG library, but there is some basic SVG support. So I think these are paths with fills, and oh, I haven't tried to load GitHub in a long time. Let's see how that looks. I know GitHub has a bunch of SVG icons. Probably is pretty broken, I was gonna say, and because we crashed, so it was very, very broken. Why did we crash, I wonder? Oh shoot, this looks very upset. Seems like we are RST flooding somebody. Okay, work that needs to be done there. We do have SVG support in libweb. It is limited and could definitely use a lot of work, like everything else. Let's see, Yefam says, no problem, I do understand, and I'm assuming that you're more introverted, that it may drain your energy quite a bit when interacting with people and also developing SerenityOS at the same time. Right, that is true. It's something that keeps changing for me. Like, I've obviously become a lot more comfortable with this over time, but I do definitely find it draining to put out all of this sort of social energy, right? But it gets easier every time, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about like making YouTube videos and being willing to be bad at it in order to get better. I think when I started doing these live streams, I felt really uncomfortable, and afterwards I would just sleep for several hours, but now it's getting easier, and I think I enjoy the process of getting better at this, and it seems valuable. So I'm glad that we're all here and that you're helping me get through this initial phase of like learning how to do it. Let's see. Siavash says, could you clarify the stance on developing everything in-house? How deep does that go? Does Serenity have its own SSL, file system implementations, etc.? Yes, it has its own SSL and file system implementations. We have for SSL, we have libTLS, which implements TLS 1.2, and for file system, we have a handful of different file systems. We use ext2 normally for the root file system. We also have tempfs, devfs, stuff like that, and there's ISO 9660 file system implementation in the works right now. Idiot says, what is the status of Serenity running on hardware? So this is not something I specifically work on regularly, but there are a bunch of people who hack on bare metal support, and there's a Discord channel specifically about that. So if you join the SerenityOS Discord on discord.gg/SerenityOS, there is the bare metal channel that you can join, and that's what they talk about there. So if you have an interest in trying to get Serenity running on your machine on bare metal, and you're willing to write some code to get that working, then I think that's the place to be. Let's see, Armo says, SerenityOS must keep the DIY model of development as far as I'm concerned. It is pro developers and that is just fine. Yes, I agree with that. I think the do-it-yourself development model is integral to the project. And I love that we are this type of project where if you want something to happen, it's your responsibility to make it happen. If you want Serenity running on your hardware and nobody accidentally has the same hardware as you, it's up to you to get that working. I think it's a really fun and inspiring environment to be part of, and it's just a great way to learn awesome skills, and it's just a lot of fun. Like I wouldn't want to be anywhere else right now than this environment. So GH Fear asks, are there more Swedish programmers and hackers here? I have noticed it's difficult to find people from Sweden to connect with ever since I started programming. I don't know that there are many Swedish people here. I know there are a couple of Swedish developers on the Serenity project. And I don't know why you would want to connect to Swedish people specifically. That's not something I ever wanted myself. Like I always try to just connect with people who have a shared interest, not a shared nationality, at least in this type of context. But I'm sure that if you specifically want to meet Swedish people, then just make yourself known as Swedish, and then they will probably find you. Yeah, look here. Andy already found you, so there's two of you. So B-Targ says, what are your thoughts on using external libraries or copying already available code from open source projects instead of making your own? I'm not interested in doing that. That ruins all the fun. There's so much fun in figuring out how to do something ourselves and just doing it, right? Even if we don't get all the features right, or from the beginning, or if we mess something up, just the fact that we go through that process of figuring out how to get the thing going makes it so much more rewarding. And once things do start working well, then we have an infinitely more hackable system that people actually understand much better than if we had just taken some random third-party thing and integrated it. And yeah, it's just so much more fun. Let's see. Ecoptic asks, did you ever implement a QR code scanner or something similar? No, I have never done that. I don't think I've ever done any image recognition type thing, actually. The closest thing I ever did was work with an RFID system, but then I just received the tag IDs over a serial port. Daniel asks, any more Serenity developer interviews? I have a bunch of Serenity developer interviews scheduled, or not scheduled, I shouldn't say. I have a bunch of them where people have expressed interest in doing them, but it's just down to scheduling, and also like not everybody is comfortable doing that kind of thing, and I would love it if people were, but the reality is that that many people who do programming are just not willing to do that kind of thing, and I have to respect that. But I have a couple of people who have agreed to do it, and it should hopefully happen eventually. Let's see. Lebster says, can you show us some of Serenity's other themes? Sure, we can show some other themes. Let's see. So we have the coffee theme. This is based on the Java desktop system from Sun. It was a Linux distribution that they put out in the early 2000s, I think, like 2003, something like that. I think Brendan added this theme a long time ago. It's called Coffee because Java, because, you know. And the, let's see, the Sunshine theme. This may also be a Brendan creation, actually, based on the common desktop environment that used to be part of the Sun Unix back in the 90s. And then, of course, we have Redmond, which is a Windows 95 style theme. And Redmond 2000, which is a Windows 2000 style. I really like this one, by the way. Nord, I don't remember who added this. I think Nord is one of those like color themes that you can find for all kinds of applications. I don't particularly like it. It looks, the menu in particular looks really weird. It's probably something we should try to fix. But I think the default theme is the nicest, obviously, and if another theme were nicer, I would just make it the default. I do encourage people to find ways to improve our themes. And if somebody can think of a better dark theme, that would be good, because I think this dark theme, it's okay, but it feels like a little bit weak. Again, like the menu here also looks awkward, like the darker menu. I don't know about that. So something to dig into. There's also like these weird discolorations almost, like if we grab the magnifier and look, for example, oh shoot, if we look here, like you see the horizontal dark stripe here looks really strange. That's kind of my fault though, because I always run the default theme, so I don't notice these things enough for them to bother me enough to fix them. Let's see. Oh shoot, I got carried away asking. Missing a bunch of questions here. Leo Rido asks, what do you do for a living? I work on SerenityOS for a living. If you check out the FAQ, which is on the bottom left of the screen, oopsie doopsie, you can see here, as of May 2021, I'm working on SerenityOS full-time. And, oh shoot, I'm running out of time, so let's see if we can wrap it up here. Armo says, I really loved the developer interview with Ali. He was slightly uncomfortable, but he was amazing. Yeah, I love that interview as well. It was really, really good to finally see Ali and talk to him. And I think he did such a great job, and he's such a great character. And I would love to meet and introduce more of all these interesting characters that hang out in the SerenityOS community. And Ali is a brilliant guy, and I definitely can't say that I was any more comfortable when I first started doing videos and stuff. I think he did a great job, and he just needs to do more of that and get better at it if he wants to. The one thing with that interview that I feel like I screwed up a little bit was that in the beginning, where he was struggling to find the words, like I should have helped somehow. I feel like that was kind of my fault. I screwed that up a little bit, and it's something that I need to get a bit better at for the future. But at the same time, I didn't want to edit that out or anything. I just wanted to show you the authentic thing, and but that was mostly my fault, I think. Let's see. Vitslab says Darkula should look awesome. Yeah, maybe it would. I don't know. It's worth trying. Let's see, German was asking here, what's the deal with vectors inline capacity? I don't really understand the naming of that parameter. So the vector class that we have in Serenity has a second template argument, which is optional. So you can have a vector of string with an optional inline capacity. Normally you might just do this, right? Strings, but you could also do strings too. And what this means is that the vector will have space for 16 entries baked into the object itself, just as a flat array at the end of it. So this is really convoluted to show the vector class at this point because it has grown so much. But basically the memory layout of this vector right here is maybe something like this. Size, capacity, and like imagine something like this, right? Whereas if you do it this way with an inline capacity, then we might have something like string 16 inline storage. Okay, that's a really stupid way of writing that. But like imagine it that way, sort of. So we have dedicated storage here, and what this gives us is that we can append up to 16 elements to this vector, and all of those will just go in stack storage, so there's no need to call malloc. For anything that's like really hot, if you can avoid mallocing and just use the stack, that's really tends to be really helpful for avoiding performance issues. Paul Fragaman says, do you edit your videos in any way? I edit the sound to get rid of noise, because there's a whole lot of noise. So I do a noise reduction filter, but I don't usually cut out anything. There have been a couple of times over the years where I edited out some like really loud sneezes and things like that. But I try to avoid editing as much as possible when it comes to programming videos. Obviously, the monthly update videos, I do a bit of editing more recently, trying to get better at it. It takes time. Let's see. Vitslab says, thank you. You have an amazing energy and knowledge. You attract good people. Well, if I attract good people, then I am very, very happy. That is basically the most awesome thing that you could hope for, is to attract good people. So I'll take that as a huge compliment. And now I have to go. So thank you all for coming to office hours. I hope that we covered some interesting topics and questions, and I really appreciate that everybody came. And I really appreciate all the questions. It's so good coming into this not knowing what we're going to talk about. So thank you very much for bringing the energy, the questions, and for all the super chats. And if you haven't seen my developer interview with Ali, I strongly encourage everybody to go and check that out next. So I'm going to link that right here, because I really liked interviewing Ali. And if you look through my channel, you can also find an earlier interview I did with Linus if you want to watch more interviews. So check that out as well. But yeah, that'll be the end of the stream. So thank you all very much for hanging out, and I will see you all next time.